Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. Ag policy's been driving headlines in Washington, D.C. recently. Incoming President Donald Trump nominated Brooke Rollins to be his ag secretary, and we'll talk with Josh Baitke about that nomination later in the program. We're also hearing chatter about the Farm Bill, and I had the chance to catch up with Mary Kay Thatcher of Syngenta, and I asked her what does she expect Congress to actually get accomplished before the end of this session.
They have to pass these 12 appropriations bills so we don't have a government shutdown, or else they got to kick the can down the road again. They will pass the National Defense Authorization Act. They do every year for 60-some years. And then I think we've got to pass a weather disaster bill, not just for the hurricanes, but certainly for fires and floods and everything else. And, you know, beyond that and the leadership elections we have ongoing, people saying, I want to be chairman of this committee, that committee, I think we're going to run out of time and people wanting to go home for Christmas to get much more done.
So I'm not hearing Farm Bill in your list of things that are going to get done. Mary Kay, what does that mean for producers on the ground?
Well, again, we're going to have to kick the can down the road, and it's already way, way overdue. But the fact is, a farm bill now, especially when we think about reference prices that might help farmers, et cetera, if we pass that farm bill today, they wouldn't get help until October of next year anyway. So it's not like it's immediate help, and that's why I think you see here so many people talking about let's have a short-term economic financial assistance package for agriculture. I'd like to believe that something like that might happen in lame duck, but I'm a little bit iffy. It's probably a $20 billion hit, and I'm just not sure Congress is quite ready to spend that money right now on that issue.
All right. Well, when Congress does end their lame duck session, new Congress shows up January 2025. A lot of issues on their plate. What do you think this Congress needs to tackle?
Well, certainly the thing they have to do is by the end of the year, they have to tackle that whole set of tax cuts that were made in 2017. Issues really important to farmers. Estate taxes, stepped up basis, $199 deduction for co-ops, individual income tax rates. So they have to do that. I think the wisdom is now that we have a Republican trifecta that they will try to do that in a reconciliation bill. Most likely the first 100 days of Congress. When you have a reconciliation bill, it only takes 50 senators to pass something versus 60. So I think they'll shove that tax bill, maybe portions of the farm bill. I mean, they could light it up like a Christmas tree if they wanted, but I think tax bill and the first reconciliation is going to be one of the biggest orders of business.
Now, if these are passed via reconciliation, does that change how long these programs could be in effect for? Does it add a sunset date, or is it just as if it was passed via the regular method?
It's just the regular method. It's just that in most Congresses you can do one reconciliation bill a year. It does have to be tied to budget. I mean, you can't just throw everything in there. But certainly the tax bill would fit right in, and they'll be able to do it with 50 votes. So, you know, if you assume that John Thune can keep his 53 Republicans in line, and you assume Mike Johnson can keep his very thin majority over there, then they can pass it without having to negotiate it with the Democrats. If they can't, then they're going to have some Democratic help.
All right. Inflation Reduction Act. We're seeing billions of dollars roll out of Washington, D.C. as a consequence of that bill. President Trump has threatened to get rid of it. What do you think happens? Is that possible? Can he get rid of it?
Well, I think for sure he can't get rid of the money that already went out. That's done. But there's, in the conservation kind of provisions, there's probably about $13 billion left that people want to claw back. People wanted to claw part of it back to use in the Farm Bill, too. That makes me as an Aggie really nervous because, you know, they found this money, and they found some money in the Commodity Credit Corporation by saying you can't change the Thrifty Food Plan. But now other people in Congress see that there's found money out there. Well, the concern is, what if that found money gets spent over here before we can get it done in the Farm Bill? But I don't think they'll roll back all of the Inflation Reduction Act. You think about, you know, certainly you got corn and soybean farmers that really want the 45Z tax credit. So to just go say, do away with IRA, I think not.
Well, our thanks to Mary Kay Thatcher of Syngenta for filling us in on what could be ahead for this Congress as they round out this most recent session. And then, of course, we'll continue to keep an eye once that new Congress is seated in mid-January. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. It's time to dig into the markets, and we've seen lots of news over the last 10 days, specifically in the cattle complex. Joining me this week to discuss it is Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing in Britain, South Dakota. And Dwayne, thanks for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me.
So we saw the cattle on feed report here just about 10 days ago come out. It was widely regarded as a bearish cattle on feed report. Dwayne, what was the bad news in it from a trader's perspective?
The bad news was probably the higher placement numbers, more cattle on feed out there. That could be a lot of things, though, Mike. First thing is, remember, about a month ago, and remember, these reports are always delayed a little bit back to the beginning of the month, we had really poor winter wheat conditions out there, right? So I think a lot of cattle were on feed instead of out on winter wheat fields grazing, and that's changed quite a bit here recently. So that could be a big part of it. But yeah, a lot of placements, but doesn't mean our inventory is that huge yet.
I mean, the largest placement since November of 2019, I believe, Dwayne. Where are we even coming up with all of these cattle to put on feed?
Well, ironically, part of them come as imports. A lot of them come from Mexico. We usually import over 100,000 head of feeder cattle from Mexico each month. And of course, that took a little turn this week, didn't it?
It did. And so let's jump into that piece of the marketing news. Mexican cattle imports have been suspended, Dwayne, due to a Mexican screwworm. Can you fill us in on the details here?
Yeah, the details kind of came out over the weekend, a little bit fuzzy, but yeah, this screwworm was found in the very southern edge of Mexico, and it's a fly that the larvae can create, disease and sores in cattle, and actually can be spread to humans too. Now, we had it in the 60s and eradicated it, so it's nothing new, but it's enough of a scare. It's just time to close the borders, like I said. So now we're not going to import those live cattle to go on feed. We're not going to import the beef imports, the products themselves, the box meat, anything to come in. So that created quite a stir in the market and a sharp up rally here. But how long is really the big question, Mike? We don't know. If it's only a month, it's not a big deal, but this could last a couple of months, and then we got a serious situation, because remember, our supplies are still very tight here.
They are. And so as you're watching that tight supply situation, the strong demand situation that's ongoing from the U.S. consumer, fats or feeders, who's going to have the biggest long-term impact if this Mexican trade suspension continues beyond, say, February?
I would say definitely the feeders there, because that's we get some feeders from Mexico to come into southern feedlots. So I think the feeders could rally first. And you know what they always say, feeders are the leaders and live cattle will probably follow. But you're right, that demand has been very strong too. It's a fun situation right now.
It is fun. Let's talk a little bit more about demand. Of course, we're heading into the holiday season. The turkey week of Thanksgiving's behind us. Now a lot of folks are looking at those rib roasts and some of the beef cuts for their holiday gatherings. Do you expect demand to stay strong as we round out 2024?
I do. I mean, a lot of that holiday purchases have probably already been done, but demand has stayed strong. We're still above 300 for choice cutouts. I will warn everybody listening, though, we do have a very strong seasonal tendency for prices to drop after Thanksgiving into mid-December, but those seasonal tendencies are just that. They're tendencies. You slap the border closed in Mexico and everything can change. So buckle up. It'll still stay the same. I will say that the only negative thing out there is our really heavy carcass weights, 35 pounds heavier than a year before. And that's because everything that's sold at a sale barn, everything goes back to feed. We're trying to put as much meat on every carcass as possible, and that's how the packers are getting through this light inventory section.
As you look ahead to 2025, there's been talk about new tariffs coming on the scene. I know exports haven't been a huge driver of beef demand this past year, but Dwayne, is that something that you're keeping an eye on?
It's something I'm very aware of. Going into this week, there was a lot of talk of how do we get through this low cattle number and position we're in. And the thought was, well, imports, and then we're not going to export anything. Watch the U.S. dollar flying higher. So that made a lot of sense. So it is definitely a concern of mine. Now, all of a sudden, this Mexico thing happened where we're closing the border. If we get that open back up, eventually that is kind of what stops this rally, is we'll just import the meat in, from Brazil, from Mexico, everywhere, just to counteract our tight supplies.
Any advice then? Should producers be hedging today, with that being the risk?
Well, I'm obviously talking fairly bullish, so I like the market going higher, but there's nothing wrong with put options or LRP to put a floor on it, but keep your ceiling open.
Keep that ceiling open in this volatile market. That certainly makes sense. Dwayne Bussey, Bolt Marketing, thanks so much for filling us in on the dynamics in the cattle market.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. With Thanksgiving now in the rearview mirror, preparations turn to the Christmas holiday, and that's true in Washington, D.C. as well. For 60 years, the Capitol Christmas tree has stood on the west side of the Capitol, and every year it comes from a national park. This year, it comes from the Tongass National Forest in Alaska. It's America's largest national forest, and Pat Haggerty has the story.
The 85-foot tree made a grand entrance on a specially decorated truck. And there were plenty of Alaskans there to welcome the tree. Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan was there too.
It's the biggest national forest in the country, in Alaska. This tree was taken from Wrangell Island, which is and you know, we have beautiful big trees in Alaska, and now we're going to celebrate it with the rest of America.
Jim Kaufman, the director of Capitol Grounds, received the tree.
And I am honored to accept this year's tree on behalf of the United States Congress. Lighting the Capitol Christmas tree has been a holiday tradition since 1964, and it's one that we're always happy to be a part of. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the Capitol Christmas tree, and we are honored to have this Sitka spruce all the way from the Tongass National Forest, located in the great state of Alaska. The tree had quite a journey. It traveled more than 700 miles over the sea and more than 4,000 miles on land.
Barbara Miranda is with the National Forest Service.
It's bright and green and fresh with no needles falling off of it yet because it was harvested with the complete root ball intact. And some really innovative, ingenious Alaska kids figured out a system to keep that tree moist all the way across the country.
She included a greeting from the 19 native tribes who live there.
Kayech, Sagu, Ka, Tuwuke. And that means peace, joy, and happiness. And we hope that's what this tree brings to the nation here today.
It will take about a week to install and decorate the tree.
We'll spend the next several days decorating the tree with thousands of LED lights and thousands of handcrafted ornaments, handcrafted by the people of Alaska.
And when those 5,000 LED lights are lit, it will be as beautiful as this. At the U.S. Capitol, Patrick Haggerty, happy holidays.
Thank you, Patrick, for that story. That tree looks fantastic, lit up with all of those lights.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, Greg, the weather story out of the West Coast the past few weeks has been the waves of moisture. Are they going to catch a break anytime soon?
Yeah, a break with a realignment of all the steering currents and the winds up aloft here. We even had moisture into the central and southern valleys of California the past couple of weeks, but it's warmth and high pressure ridging up aloft, so sinking air, lots of sun, and a nice recovery on temperatures, and certainly a pristine look to a lot of snow on the mountains out through the Cascades and northern and central Rockies. Remember, some of these systems did generate some flooding into parts of northern California and western sections of Oregon, but that Willamette Valley Rogue River Basin ought to be in relatively good shape. On the other side of the coin, it's cold air with a kind of January look and feel. Canadian Prairie, big sky across the Dakotas coming up and off of last week's snowfall and readings that were down close to zero in some spots. That trend probably continues on, so dress and plan accordingly with outdoor chores in mind. Very little change to the weather maps and charts. The ridge locked in here, the trough down in the cold air east of the Black Hills, and so again, some readings down close to, if not a bit below zero at night. Canadian Prairie, single digits and teens across the northern plains. Delightful outdoor work in the Pacific Northwest, northern valleys of California as well. One weak system begins to come ashore late in the week. Otherwise, a lot of that moisture getting shutted northward into British Columbia. Colder, drier air into the central and southern plains. Probably some recurrent frost and freezes all the way down south of the Red River Valley to the south. Upslope conditions with a couple of snow showers and flurries, central Rockies, and there's a a weak system at least trying to come ashore, mainly coastal sections that may see some low clouds and a couple of sprinkles, Bay Area and southward early to middle parts of the week. Little change in that circulation as the week wears on. Nice recovery on temperatures back to more seasonal norms. Desert Southwest and more or less kind of an early winter chill across much of the central and southern plains, but I guess, Mike, appropriate for meteorological winter time here across the country.
I think you're right, Greg. And as you look across the central part of the U.S., is cold the main headline next week, or do you also see precipitation?
Yeah, basically cold weather. We'll get some soil temperature readings to come on down, a little frost and freeze into the ground as well. Any anhydrous application you still got to go, or at least crossing the T's, dotting the I's on fall field work and harvest. Should be able to get it complete over really a wide area, but here is this northwest jet stream pattern. A couple of disturbances will continue to rotate down southward, so some passing snow showers and flurries, but significant lake moisture expected downwind into upper Michigan. Had a nice snow here last week back into parts of the Black Hills, but focused in this part of the country, lower lakes region. So some cold days and nights, but the winter sun will feel pretty fine as well. The wind pattern will be generally light most of the action, and it's not much to speak of here. Once again, another system up aloft, so snow showers and flurries downwind to the Great Lakes region. Otherwise cold, dry weather for outdoor work across much of the heartland. Here's the leading edge of some of that cold air into the Rio Grande area and southward and eastward from there along the Gulf Coast. There will be, where skies clear, winds drop off, some freezes all the way down to the Red River Valley of the south and eastward from there, so plan accordingly. And otherwise, the moisture continues on over parts of eastern Texas, Gulf Coast areas. Some moderation beginning to work back in to the southern high plains areas with basically cold, dry weather up through the Tennessee Valley and Ohio Valley as well.
Now, how does this pattern drive weather for the eastern third of the country, Greg?
They're kind of in the middle of the trough, as we say, so you get systems that kind of drop in here and intensifies the cold, lifting to the north and northeast. So it's just basically snow showers and flurries downwind of the Great Lakes region. Accumulations are likely, a few flakes into the central Appalachians and probably old Mississippi River on westward. Cold, dry, high pressure in control. A little dip out there for outdoor work, maybe a little more feed requirement as well for livestock. And there's very little change here as we move through the late portions of the week. Another upper air trough and cold front on the move. Lakes reach into the northeast of New England. Wind chill will be picking on up and lowering on down. Otherwise, a pretty good go of it. Just dress and plan accordingly for a January feel into these early days of December time. Then freeze potential again all the way down into parts of Dixie, the Tennessee Valley. There may be a little rain snow system that moves out of the central Appalachians early in the week. Otherwise, some rain activity and a chilly rain at lat along the Gulf Coast and eastward in through Florida. Not much of a change here. Freeze potential into the southeastern states late in the week. Moderation into the southern plains, and this boundary along with low pressure will generate showers. A couple of thunderstorms down across the Sunshine State.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Over the next month, many holiday gatherings will feature beef. At least that's the case historically, and December demand is a strong driver of beef profitability. Recently, I had the chance to catch up with Ryan Morehouse of the Cattlemen's Beef Board to hear how beef demand has been shaping up recently.
Beef demand has been really resilient over these high prices, and people, they got to pick what they want to eat and the proteins they want to eat, and our job is to promote beef to the center of the plate so we can keep our product in front of them and keep them enjoying it.
Exports, Ryan, I know that is an issue that CBB keeps a watch over. As you sit here and look out to 2025 with this high-priced cattle, are you concerned about the ability of U.S. beef to move overseas?
Absolutely. With the higher cost, it's harder to move the product overseas. Cattlemen's Beef Board has an outstanding contractor, the U.S. Meat Export Federation, and that is their job to promote beef overseas, and they do it with checkoff dollars. They do get some of the checkoff dollars, but they do a great job of in the markets that are already established. They do a great job, and then they do a great job developing new markets for U.S. beef and beef byproducts. It may be some of the products that we wouldn't be as high demand in the U.S. They try to push those overseas as well to utilize the whole carcass.
Absolutely. Find all that value in these animals that we are processing. Ryan, Cattlemen's Beef Board, as I understand it, is made up of producers. Can you tell us a little bit about your operation?
Absolutely. So the Cattlemen's Beef Board made up of 100 producers across all states. In my case, I'm in the stocker, cow-calf, and the feeding part of the industry. Grew up doing it and have continued to do it throughout my career. So a little dabble in a little all of it. So I get to see the whole view of the whole industry, and it's been great being on the beef board and helping other industry people understand, other parts of the industry.
That's a great point, Ryan. If we've got folks watching who want to learn more about what the Cattlemen's Beef Board does, or perhaps work on it in some capacity, where would you send them to learn more?
Absolutely. So great website is drivingdemandforbeef.com, and you can get on there and see everything. We're very transparent, obviously, with checkoff dollars, so you can get on there and see budgets. You can see contractors, what they're doing with the checkoff dollars, and also get any information you like to have off that website.
Thank you, Ryan, for the update. And folks, there is a wealth of information on that Driving Demand for Beef website. Be sure to check that out. Recently, Max Armstrong had the chance to talk with Jamie Shepard, a regional sales manager at Firestone Ag, about tires. Specifically, what are the concerns and questions that Jamie is getting from farmers about their tires here in 2024?
So I get a lot of, you're expensive, things are tight right now. Money's a little tight. So I have to explain to them how we may be more expensive at the beginning, but at the end of the life of the tire, we save them money. And we do that through proper tractor setup. We do some field clinics, educate the farmers on how to get their tractor set up properly to get the optimum performance out of their tires.
Energy and its cost have been more in focus for farmers, of course, over the past couple of seasons. When you look at energy usage, can the tire play a major role in that? Can it make a difference?
Most definitely, yes. Yeah, you got to transfer that horsepower to the ground, and more ground covered is less time in the field, less fuel burned. That all equates to savings.
Share with me a little bit of background on the Firestone Ag Clinics. How do they work? What is the setup there? Do you have individual farmers coming in a group, and,
yes,
and you just give them a short course? Tell me. Just describe it. If I were there, what would I see, Jamie?
So a field clinic, we do that through our certified dealer network. We have 2,500 certified, Firestone certified associate dealers across the United States. So we'll invite their farmers, they'll invite their farmers to the field clinic, and we call it a fuel savings clinic, basically. And we usually typically start at 9 in the morning. We'll have class time. We'll educate them on how to set their tractors up properly, why that's important, how that equates to saving them money and time in the field. So after the field clinic is usually over around 11:30, we'll feed them lunch, and then we offer to weigh their equipment, their tractors while they're there. I have portable scales. We'll weigh them, make sure their tractors are set up properly, give them a sheet that lays out all their air pressures. But it's important also, they have different types of farming, whether they're using a 3-point equipment, whether they're using a drawbar pulled, and whether they're pulling a grain cart. We set the air pressures according to that load.
So the producer will actually bring her or his tractor to you?
Yes. Yeah, or we'll go out to their farm, either way.
Wow. Pressure, air pressure. I think we take it for granted sometimes. I've become a little bit of a nut about it. I think I'm paying more attention to it as I have more tires to look after. I'm watching that air pressure closer. It's crucial, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very important, yes. Very important. You have to have enough air to carry the load. But if you have overinflated, then you're going to have compaction issues, which causes crop damage, or you're going to have traction issues, which is going to cause more slippage, more time, more fuel burned, more wear on your tires. So we want that optimum pressure to save them time.
We think about maybe ahead of the harvest season or the planting season, whatever we're looking forward to next. We think about, okay, we'll take care of the pressure then. What about going into a season where you don't have much use of that equipment? What is your guidance on the air pressure there?
So it's important when you store your equipment that you don't want flat tires. It's going to cause harm to the tires. So it's important to have them inflated when you put them away for the winter time or for the off season. And then before you start up, just like you're going to check the oil in that tractor before you start it up, you need to check your air pressures.
Thank you, Max, and thank you, Jamie. Air pressure is crucial, and not just in your farm equipment. This time of year, as temperatures are dropping, check the air pressures in your road vehicles as well, particularly before you start traveling for the holiday season. Leave it here. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness when we return.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH. Built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. It's time now to join our friends from Pioneer and go between the rows. This week we're talking with Kelly Fickett. He's a grower from south central Nebraska, just one county north of that Kansas state line. And Kelly, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
I'm glad to visit with you.
Fill us in a little bit on your farm. What all do you grow?
We're 100% irrigated corn and soybeans, almost probably 95% pivot irrigation. A few dryland corners, a few other small dryland fields, but predominantly pivot irrigation.
All right. How did this growing season work out for you? What were some of the weather challenges you faced there in south central Nebraska?
Well, overall, it was probably a drier than normal year as far as rainfall during the middle of growing season. But, with pivot irrigation, we just kept plugging away. But compared to a year ago, we stayed away from some intense heat late in the season, which probably helped boost our yields a little bit this year. So overall, it was a very good growing season.
Well, that is good to hear, Kelly. Now, which Pioneer products did you have on the farm this year?
Enlist. We were 100% Enlist soybeans this year. I wasn't going to have some two different kinds of beans when it comes to spraying. So we were 100% Enlist, but about 3 different varieties of the Enlist bean.
And how did they perform? That Z Series soybean, I've heard a lot about this past year. Kelly, how did it work on your operation?
Very good this year. Very happy with our bean yields. We had 3 separate yield checks on 3 separate farms that the yield checks all went over 100. And I think our overall bean average on every acre was somewhere between 85 and 90 bushel an acre.
How does that stack up in your prior year's farming?
I never had this good of beans before. Never hit even on a test strip, never hit the 100 bushel mark. So it was kind of a nice accomplishment to make yourself feel better.
Absolutely. And I imagine when that combine's running through the fields and you're seeing the yield numbers start to tick those kind of triple digits, that's a good feeling at harvest time, isn't it?
Very good. Very good.
How did harvest go overall for the beans? Standability still really quality on those?
Yeah, standability was fine. We started planting 15-inch row beans about 4 or 5 years ago. So I don't think we're seeing the lodging problems when it comes to harvest. But we had a lot of 85, 90 degree weather almost during bean harvest with low humidity. So the beans dried down awful fast. So as long as you didn't break down the combine, you just kept plugging away every day to get them out as quick as you could.
Absolutely. Kelly, how's it been working with your local Pioneer team?
Very good. Very happy. I've been working with these guys for years. I've been farming since 1979. And I've been planting Pioneer products from 1979 till now. And the local seed salesman and the guys up above him and stuff are very easy to work for. Very happy.
Well, that makes bringing a successful harvest in that much more satisfying when you've got a good team to do it with. Kelly Fickett, South Central Nebraska farmer, thank you so much for filling us in on what's happening between the rows with Pioneer on your farm.
You're very welcome.
And folks, you can learn more at pioneer.com.
Greg Sodier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Earlier in the program, Greg outlined next week's precipitation. And Greg, it sounds like it might be a little light. Who's going to feel the impact?
Yeah, much a quieter weather picture across a wide area of the country. Just a couple of systems that'll be really focused from the Great Lakes and points to the south and east with jet stream winds in from northwest to southeast. And so downwind in this cold air. The certainly unfrozen waters of the Great Lakes are pretty mild still at this point, and the cold air is more or less almost winter-like. We will generate maybe up to a half-inch water equivalency. This will be the whole week of lake effect rain and snow, and primarily snow for that matter, from upper Michigan into sections of the northeast and New England. Late in the week, we may begin to see some snowfall break out into Big Sky country and the western Dakotas. Otherwise, other than a stray sprinkle, perhaps coastal sections and some moisture later into the week over the southwestern part of the country. Much of the plain states points westward, high and dry, and maybe a little moisture trying to get going as the week wears on over the southeastern part of the country. But a lot of the heartland quiet but cold this week.
Well, Greg, give us an update on temperatures as we get into the week of December 9th.
Still lingering here, this cold air intrusion. We had actually a couple of what we call subtropical systems almost at the equator that lifted up across the Atlantic. This is why we tugged the jet stream southward and we're into this cold air pattern. But it begins to ease up from about the Mississippi on westward as we approach the middle part of the month, and still some lake moisture, I'm sure, assumed here through the Great Lakes region from time to time. But overall, it is a milder weather pattern from about the Missouri on westward. And again, a pretty quiet weather picture if you're still trying to wrap it up for some reason with field work from the plains to the Ohio Valley. Maybe not great news with dryness and drought. More normalized moisture pattern back in the Pacific Northwest and the Northeast of New England. But heading towards and through about the mid-stretch of December, very quiet there, Mike, across much of the country.
As we get to the week of December 16th, Greg, do you see a warm-up?
We do, and here it is beginning to warm over the southeastern part of the country. That lobe of cold begins to work up northward, kind of a flattening of the jet stream pattern zonal from west to east. And yeah, we roll into the winter solstice, the start of wintertime on the 21st here. Some warmth over the western part of the country, and the precipitation pattern begins to pick up, but basically fast-moving systems. No major storms from this vantage point. Across the northern Rockies, some moisture, snowfall, parts of the northern and central Corn Belt, and into the southeastern states, and probably a mixture somewhere into the central plains and Midwest as well. So very manageable heading towards the beginning of official wintertime across the country.
And Christmas week, Greg, tell us what you expect to see that week.
Big warm-up in sight here. Here it is from Texas into the northeastern part of the country. The dip in the jet stream should promise to bring moisture, but probably rain. Some snowfall for the Great Lakes region. We'll keep an eye on Santa.
Our Farm Progress Roundup is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of versatile high-speed discs and achieve better results with every pass. Visit Brandt.ca for more. The ag industry was in the spotlight last week in Washington, D.C. as incoming President Donald Trump nominated Brooke Rollins to be his head of the USDA. Josh Baitke, policy editor here at Farm Progress, joins us now. And Josh, what do we know about Ms. Rollins?
You know, honestly, not a whole lot as far, at least from an agriculture standpoint. We know she's from Texas. She was active in the first Trump administration, serving as budget director, a couple of other roles. But from an ag standpoint, she really doesn't have a very extensive record. She, grew up in a small town in Texas, Glen Rose, has an agriculture degree from Texas A&M, but her career has mainly been in law and politics. She currently serves on the America First Policy Institute, which is basically a think tank dedicated to promoting, pro-Trump policies. And so we know she's a supporter of Trump, but as far as her agriculture policies, we're really still trying to dig into that and figure it out.
All right. Well, the ag industry no doubt saw this headline and then has responded. What have you heard so far from the larger commodity groups, Josh?
I'd say cautious optimism. A couple of the groups have recognized that, she has a personal ag background. I think they're willing to learn more about her. There's no reason to be concerned about her, I think, from that standpoint at this point. But there's obviously a desire to learn a lot more about what she plans to do at USDA.
Indeed there is, Josh. Now, we have seen a lot of nominations come out over the past few weeks. Kind of walk us through a timeline. Once new Congress gets started here in mid-January, how long do you expect it to take before these start to get approved?
Typically this will take, into February, into March, based on, past inaugurations. And this one, there's been a lot of controversial nominations that have, we know about Matt Gaetz from last week. I don't see the Brooke Rollins nomination at this point being controversial, so there's no reason to think that this is going to be delayed by any length of time. But, the Senate will have a chance to, ask her questions, review her background, and, if anything shows up there, that may change. But right now, this seems like it's going to be a pretty cut and dry nomination, if I had to guess.
All right. And you make a good point. We will learn a lot more about Ms. Rollins once those Ag Committee hearings pick up, once the new Congress sets in, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, she has an extensive background on there in terms of, her policy positions as they relate to Trump. We just don't know what her personal positions are in agriculture. So hopefully in the coming months, we'll get to learn a little bit more about that.
I bet we will. Lots to come as the new administration takes over in Washington, D.C. after the new year. Josh Baitke, policy editor at Farm Progress, will no doubt continue following the administration and its changes. Josh, thank you so much for joining us here this week.
Hey, always good to be here, Mike. Appreciate it.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. In the Tractor Shed this weekend, I'm thinking, as I often do, Thanksgiving weekend, about the folks who've gone on before us and contributed in some way to our lives. I'll tell you about one, and the young people who've restored his tractor in Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. Well, if you're a regular viewer here of the Tractor Shed, you've heard me talk about a guy by the name of Arlie Birkbigler. Arlie Birkbigler was the gentleman in southeast Missouri who restored all of the tractors on display at the American Tractor Museum at Perryville, Missouri. We lost Arlie earlier this year, but you can still see all of those tractors, and you'll be able to see his tractor that has been restored after his passing by what is called the Four Rivers Career Center night class. Now, this is something where high school students participate in an extracurricular activity a couple of nights a week during the school year. They report for duty at the night class, and that's right, they work on old tractors. Let me tell you a little more about it as I show you Arlie's old tractor. It's a Ferguson TO30, and it was made in 1951. And that tractor was restored by Dan Brinkman and the students at the Four Rivers night shift. Dan Brinkman is the automotive technology instructor who started this program back in 2009. I think they started out as a motorcycle class, but they worked on a bunch of tractors, Massey's, Farmalls, Fords, a John Deere. And the idea is to teach young people work skills and lessons for life. Mr. Brinkman says a successful student will contribute significantly to a successful community, and he's helping those young students on that path. At Washington, Missouri, it's about an hour to the west of the Gateway Arch at St. Louis, where now they've restored the tractor, an old Ferguson made in 1951 that belonged to our friend Arlie Birkbigler. Mark Stock is with us every week, and proud to call him a friend, as a matter of fact, too. Here he is with the Big Iron Report.
Well, Max, 2024 has gone pretty quick, and we're into December now with land and machinery auctions. On Tuesday, December the 3rd, 1,090 acres of McDonough and Fulton County, Illinois land will sell in 9 different tracts. This land will sell on SullivanAuctioneers.com, a virtual online real estate land auction. On Wednesday, December the 4th, a very large sale featuring retirements from Bob Naper out of Ewing, Nebraska, Alvin Cummings and the Salvation Army from Walker, Iowa. Wagner Farms are from Black Creek, Wisconsin. Jim and Jerry Kieber, they are by Spalding, Nebraska. They will sell a John Deere 4960 mechanical front. Lee Saylor is from Scotland, South Dakota. They have a Caterpillar 435 pull-type scraper and a spread-all manure spreader. On Thursday, December the 5th at 10 o'clock, Paganook Farms retirement sale features a New Holland T6030 mechanical front tractor. And on December the 6th, Gerald and Therese Jenkins are retiring. They are from Lorain, Illinois. They feature a John Deere 9560 combine. And yes, Max, a tractor that you can't find very often, the John Deere 7810 mechanical front tractor with only 3,070 hours. Check it out on Big Iron and SullivanAuctioneers.com.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. And we love getting to meet that next generation of leaders in the world of agriculture. And this week, it's Lacey Bachman. She's serving as the Ohio FFA State Secretary. Lacey, thanks for talking with us.
Well, of course. Thank you for having me.
Let's start by telling us a little bit about your ag background. It's different from just corn and soybeans, isn't it?
Yes, yes. So my background is a little different than your typical ag background. I grew up on my family's multi-generational apple orchard. So my family has been raising apples for about 5 generations now in Fairfield County. So that's on my dad's side of the family. My mom's side is more of the traditional route. They're the corn and soybean route. My grandfather raised row crops his entire life, and he also was raised hogs as well. So I have that blend of I can talk livestock, I can talk row crops, but my heart and my passion is all about where the horticulture and the specialty crops are because of course the apple orchard that I was raised on.
Certainly, and I bet that diversity gives you lots to talk about with fellow FFA members. What have been the highlights so far of your year of service, Lacey?
So definitely my highlight of my year of service is going on chapter visits and meeting so many new people. It is so fun to walk into an ag classroom knowing nothing about the program, but it's so much fun to see what is new. And in that one day I have, that very short time I have with them, I get to see so much and meet so many people and hear their stories. So hearing their stories is one of my favorite things that I get to do.
That is a fantastic part of FFA, and it's so crucial for telling the story of agriculture. Lacey, we wish you the best of luck in your year of service and forward from there.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by PTx, a new brand from AGCO that includes precision ag technologies from Precision Plantings and PTx Trimble. Yes, winter is here, and that means it gets dark earlier and earlier. It's crucial to stay safe out there on the farms, and Chad Colby has a tool that might just help us do that this winter.
Do you like bright flashlights? Well, you're going to love the technology in this tech segment. This is the brand new flashlight from Streamlight called the ProTac HL6. You can see here, this is what it comes with. It comes with their proprietary USB Type-C rechargeable batteries that I've used in the past. They work fantastic. This is the second flashlight in this generation. The one before this works great. I actually own a few of them. But this one, this is the big dog. 5,300 lumens on the high setting with 80,000 candela. That is ridiculous numbers in a small handheld flashlight, considerably more than the previous model. And look, it's got a 2-hour runtime on the highest setting. And if you back it down with the programmable button, over 12 hours, which is awesome. Very lightweight, about 1.3 pounds. And don't worry about an old light bulb. This has got LED technology with a 50,000 hour lifetime, which is wild. So I wanted to set up a demonstration to give you some idea of just how crazy bright this is. I had my daughter out 1 mile and I told her, just do your best to shine the light at me as I approach. Now I sped up this video so you can see it. The point I want to make is this flashlight is dangerously bright. It's so bright, in fact, I bought a couple of them. We have them bedside at our house because I told my wife, what a great deterrent, especially if you're, trying to get somebody's attention. This thing will do it and it will stop you. You can see here as I scroll to the left, look how it overpowers the lights of the vehicle. It's crazy how bright it is. Actually, the previous model I've kept in the door of my vehicle for years, and you can bet this new one's going to be right there as well. It's great technology. You can find it on Amazon. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate the update there, and that looks like it might make a pretty nice stocking stuffer. Leave it here, folks. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness when we return. Our Plan Smart, Grow Smart series from our friends at BASF has followed 3 growers through the season. Recently, Max had a chance to sit down with the 3 and recap some of the highlights of this past year.
Well, Ted, Chris, Evan, it's great to have you guys here with us. Thanks for coming together to join us once more. But reflecting back on this season for you, I know for some of you it was nonstop. Ted, you told me it was nonstop. There might have been a few interruptions for others, but this is one that'll be quite memorable for some in a good way.
Oh, most definitely. We never had a rain. It was dry. You could combine beans at 9 o'clock in the morning and just go till 9 o'clock at night if you choose to. So season went by pretty fast, actually.
Lessons learned from this growing season. Is there any one thing that has come to mind for you and you think, okay, we can do this next year, we can do this better next year, I'm bound to determine to make this work better for us?
The earlier we can get the beans in the ground, the better they are, and that's been 2 or 3 years coming. The earlier planted beans are exponentially better, and if you get behind a rain and you get pushed off until June, that's when you go from 65 bushel beans to 40 bushel beans.
We're working on doing some more fall fall applications, especially on the bean stubble going to corn, getting that ground good and clean. And we do a lot of cover crops for our soybeans, so we don't do any fall app with it. But, getting that clean start, warmer soil temperatures, big.
Any of you test BASF products this year on your farms?
So we use a lot of Veltima. We're still running pre-Axor on most acres, on most of our bean acres. We've used some Revitech. Outlook is what we use for our corn.
We use Outlook too.
And then we use some Zidua, and then planting Zetavo beans also.
That Outlook's a really good product for us.
It is.
There's we've used it for several years. Doesn't take hardly any moisture to activate that. If you get a chance to put it in there, we've run up to 8 to 12 ounces Outlook, and you could catch a couple tenths of rain, and it's held really nice with it. So, good product.
One thing that we've worked really closely with them is the variety selection on the new Zetavo beans, because it was something new. Had no idea. They didn't have a whole lot of a track record, so working on variety selection with them, and we've had, like I said, really good success with those.
So I gave them one farm that I let them do everything.
Okay.
They picked the variety. I give them my fertility. They had the soil types, so they picked the variety. They did the prescription for me, and somewhat in the back of my mind, I was a little bit, well, that's not quite what I would have done.
Yeah.
Well, as it turned out, I think they should be doing more of my fields like that, because the beans ended up probably 15 bushel better than I thought they would.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
pretty impressive.
And folks, you can see all the episodes of Plan Smart Grow Smart online at plansmartgrowsmart.com. And thank you so much for joining us here today. Be sure to join us next time, right here, for This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.